I want to take you back to my second season growing tomatoes, because that's when I made the mistake that I see almost every home gardener make at least once. My plants were enormous, tall, thick-stemmed, dark green all the way up. They looked, honestly, like the healthiest plants I had ever grown. I was watering them right, feeding them on schedule, staking them as they climbed. By midsummer, I had the biggest, most impressive-looking tomato plants I had ever seen in my own yard. And the tomatoes? I got about a third of what I should have. Small fruit, slow to ripen, and a lot of them cracked or split before I even got to them. The ones that did ripen were fine, decent flavor, but the harvest was thin for how much plant I had. I couldn't figure it out. The plants looked perfect, so what went wrong? The answer, when I finally understood it, was sitting right there in front of me the whole time. The plants weren't growing tomatoes. They were growing leaves. And there's a simple reason that happens. One I wish someone had explained to me before I lost that second season. Tomato pruning isn't complicated, but it does require you to understand one thing clearly. A tomato plant, left completely to its own devices, will put most of its energy into making more plant, more stems, more leaves, more growth in every direction it possibly can. What it won't prioritize, unless you guide it, is making large, flavorful, well-ripened fruit. Pruning is how you redirect that energy. It's how you take a plant that's spending itself on leaves and stems and point it instead toward doing the thing you actually planted it to do. Today I'm going to walk through exactly what I do, step by step, what to remove, what to keep, what to never touch, and when to do each of it through the season. By the time we're done, you'll be able to walk up to any tomato plant and know exactly what needs to come off and why. My name's Caleb. I grow most of my vegetables on a half-acre plot behind the house, a mix of raised beds and ground rows, depending on what I'm growing that season. Tomatoes get the long ground row along the south fence, where they get full sun from mid-morning through late afternoon. That row has been growing tomatoes for 6 seasons now, and the soil is the best it's ever been. I grow a mix of varieties, some indeterminate types that climb and keep producing all season, and a few determinate ones I grow mostly for canning. The pruning approach is different for each type, and I'll explain why that matters in a few minutes. Because doing the wrong kind of pruning on the wrong type of tomato plant is a mistake I see a lot, and it costs people a significant chunk of their harvest without them ever realizing why. I started pruning consistently about 3 seasons in, after that disappointing second year I mentioned. The difference in harvest was immediate and obvious. Same bed, same soil, same varieties, just intentional pruning through the season. I won't go back. Here's exactly what I do. Step 1. Understanding. Determinate versus indeterminate. Before you touch a single leaf, you need to know which type of tomato you're growing, because the pruning approach is fundamentally different, and getting this wrong is where most people lose yield. Indeterminate tomatoes, think most heirlooms, cherry tomatoes, beefsteaks, grow and produce continuously all season. They'll keep climbing and setting new fruit right up until frost kills them. These plants absolutely need pruning. Without it, they branch out in every direction, put energy into vegetation, and produce smaller, slower ripening fruit. Determinate tomatoes, most paste types, many canning varieties, are programmed to grow to a set size, set all their fruit in a concentrated window, and then stop. These plants need very little pruning. If you start aggressively removing suckers on a determinate plant, you're literally removing the branches that carry a significant portion of its fruit. I made this mistake on a Roma row once, and harvested about half of what the plants were capable of. Check your seed packet or plant tag before you start. If it says indeterminate, prune actively. If it says determinate, be conservative. Remove only dead, diseased, or damaged growth. Step 2. What a sucker is, and which ones to remove. A sucker is the new growth that emerges from the junction, the crotch, between the main stem and a leaf branch. Left alone, a sucker becomes a full additional stem, complete with its own leaves, flowers, and fruit. The problem is that every stem the plant supports is drawing energy, and the more stems you have, the more the plant's resources get divided. For indeterminate plants, I remove suckers below the first flower cluster regularly, typically every 7 to 10 days through the growing season. Suckers above the first flower cluster I'm more selective about. I'll sometimes leave 1 or 2 to create what's called a 2 or 3 stem plant, which gives a bit more production than a single stem, without going completely unpruned. The key with suckers is to catch them small. When they're still thin, the width of a pencil or less, you can snap them off cleanly with your fingers. No tool needed. That's a clean break with a small wound that heals fast. Once a sucker gets thick and woody, it's a different situation. You need clean pruning shears, and you need to make a clean cut, not tear. A torn wound on a thick stem is an entry point for disease. I'll show you that in a moment. Step 3. The right tool and how to use it. For small suckers, anything pencil width or less, your fingers are the best tool you have. Clean, fast, minimal wound. For anything larger, you want a good pair of bypass pruning shears, the kind with 2 blades that pass each other like scissors, rather than anvil shears that crush the stem. Crushing bruises the tissue and gives disease a way in. More important than the tool is keeping it clean. I keep a small jar with a diluted bleach solution, about 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, and I dip my shear blades between plants. This might sound overly cautious, but tomato diseases, including mosaic virus, can travel from plant to plant on a contaminated blade. I lost an entire row to mosaic one season, and I am confident the blade was how it spread. I dip between plants now, without exception. Make your cuts at a slight angle rather than straight across. The angled surface sheds water instead of pooling it, which reduces the chance of rot setting in at the wound. Step 4. The bottom third. Always clear it. One of the most consistent things I do throughout the season, regardless of variety, is keep the bottom third of every plant clear. That means removing leaves and any growth from roughly the bottom 12 to 15 inches of the plant. The reason is twofold. First, leaves near the soil line are the most likely to come into contact with soil-borne disease. Fungi and bacteria splash up from the soil during watering or rain, and they settle on the lowest leaves first. Once those leaves are infected, the disease travels up the plant. Removing them takes away the first rung of that ladder. Second, it dramatically improves airflow around the base of the plant. Fungal diseases, early blight, septoria leaf spot, love humidity and stagnant air. A clear, open base dries out faster after rain and lets air circulate, which is one of the most effective things you can do to prevent fungal problems without spraying anything. I start clearing the bottom third once the plants are established and about knee-high, and I stay on top of it all season. Any leaf that drops below that zone comes off. Any leaf that's yellowing or showing spots comes off regardless of where it is on the plant. Step 5. Topping the plant. When and why? Late in the season, roughly 4 to 6 weeks before your first expected frost date, I top my indeterminate plants. Topping means removing the growing tip at the very top of the main stem. Here's the reasoning. That growing tip is where the plant wants to put new energy. It's signaling to the plant to keep climbing, keep producing new flower clusters, keep setting new fruit. But 4 to 6 weeks before frost, any new fruit the plant sets isn't going to have time to ripen before cold kills the plant. So you're spending energy on tomatoes you're never going to eat. When you remove that growing tip, the plant stops sending energy upward and redirects it to the fruit that's already on the plant. And those tomatoes ripen faster, often more evenly, and with better flavor concentration. The timing matters. Too early and you cut off weeks of production. Too late and the frost comes before the energy redirect does any good. 4 to 6 weeks before your average first frost date is the sweet spot I've found for my area. Check your local frost calendar and mark that date before the season starts. Step 6. What not to remove. The mistakes that cost yield. Here's what I don't remove, and this matters just as much as what I do. I never remove the leaf directly below a flower or fruit cluster. That leaf is feeding that cluster directly. It's called the flag leaf, and taking it off can cause the cluster below it to drop or the developing fruit to stall. I see people strip these off, thinking they're helping airflow, and it actually costs them tomatoes. Leave those leaves alone. I also leave the large, healthy upper leaves that are still flat and green and getting good sun exposure. Those leaves are the plant's solar panels. They're doing the work of converting sunlight into the energy that fills and ripens the fruit. Removing healthy upper foliage in the name of more airflow is a mistake. Airflow management is about the bottom of the plant, not the productive upper canopy. And I never remove flower clusters unless the plant is seriously stressed, and I'm making a deliberate choice to direct all remaining energy to the fruit that's already set. Flowers become tomatoes. Protect them. The simple rule I follow: remove what's dead, diseased, or competing for energy from below. Protect everything that's feeding or becoming fruit. One quick thing before we get to the numbers. If you want more of this kind of practical growing knowledge delivered simply and without a lot of fuss, I put out a short weekly note where I share what's actually happening in my own garden that week. What's working, what isn't, and what I'm learning. The link's in the description if that's for you. All right, let's talk about what this actually costs and saves a household. Let me put some numbers around why this matters. A home gardener growing 4 indeterminate tomato plants without pruning might expect somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 pounds of tomatoes per plant over a season, and that's being generous, because a lot of that fruit will be undersized, slow to ripen, or lost to disease that got in through poor airflow. The same 4 plants, pruned consistently through the season, suckers managed, bottom third clear, topped at the right time, regularly produce 25 to 30 pounds per plant for experienced growers. I've hit that range consistently for the past 3 seasons. The difference between 40 pounds of tomatoes and 100 pounds of tomatoes from the same 4 plants is significant when you're putting food up for the year. 100 pounds of tomatoes is roughly 60 to 70 pints of sauce, depending on how you reduce it. 40 pounds gets you about 25 pints. At around $3 a pint for decent canned tomatoes at the store, that difference is worth somewhere between $100 and $130 in preserved food from the same 4 plants and the same amount of garden space. The only thing that changed is what you removed and when. That's not a complicated calculation. It's just a matter of knowing what to do and doing it consistently. Here's what I want you to do this week. Go out to your tomato plants, however many you have, and just walk alongside them. Look at the base. Are there leaves touching the soil? Remove them. Are there suckers in the lower crotches, below that first flower cluster? Pinch them off. That's where you start. You don't need to do everything at once. Pruning is a regular habit, not a one-time project. 10 minutes every week, through the growing season, is more effective than an hour once a month. One question I'd love you to answer in the comments. Which type of tomato are you growing this season? Determinate? Indeterminate? Or honestly, you're not sure yet? Tell me the variety name if you know it, and I'll answer every one I can. And if you've been pruning your tomatoes for years, and you've got a method or a trick I didn't mention here, I want to hear it. Some of the best things I've learned about this garden have come from people who left a comment. If this video was useful to you, I'll ask you to do 3 things before you leave. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. And share this with one gardener you know who might be making that same mistake I made in my 2nd season. It costs them tomatoes every year, and they probably don't know why. Next time, I'm going to walk through everything I know about staking and supporting tomatoes, because the way you support a plant affects how you prune it, and most people are using methods that fight the plant instead of working with it. I'll see you in the garden.